Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of the Watch Us Thrive podcast. I am super excited for this week's guest. We have a scientist on the show, okay? Yes, something very different, but I'm super excited to highlight so many different people out there who are doing such healing work despite what they've gone through. And I'm going to let her introduce herself to the audience, but Mary, girl, you've been through some shit, okay? And I'm really excited to learn about you and your story, where you came from and what you do now. But for people who are meeting you for the first time, just let them know who you are and what you do.
Yes. Hi, everyone. So my name is Mary Love, and I am born and raised in New Jersey. Holistically, I'm a scientist. I'm a yogi. I teach meditation, and I am a writer. And I will have 3 books out in the next, I'd say, 6 to 8 months.
Yes.
And through
Congratulations.
all of that, thank you. Through all of that, I mean, there's a lot that I've gone through to get me to where I am today. So that's pretty much me as an adult, but I carry a lot of what I have with me and try to.
Yes. And I just want to shout out Amber Lay. That's how I connected with you. She had hosted a healing circle last year and you had facilitated it was like a yoga type of thing that you did, right?
It was yoga and
Yeah,
meditation, yeah.
yoga meditation. And, it was just such a beautiful space that a lot of us came together to share our stories and talk about the shit that we've gone through. That's how me and you connected. And I remember Amber said to me, you got to get her on your show because her story is insane. The things that you've gone through, but to see who you've turned into despite the shit that you've gone through. That's why I'm so grateful that we were able to connect and really sit down and have this conversation, because it really makes me think that like you cannot judge a book by its cover, because everyone has gone through some shit. So I want you, in however comfortable you are with sharing, who Mary was before the life that you grew up in, some of the things that you've experienced before you really started on your whole healing personal development journey.
As I mentioned, I grew up in New Jersey. So I grew up in Central Jersey, Somerset County area. So the trauma actually started before I was born, but both of my parents had a multitude of trauma before that. And I go into that a bit more detail in my book. But from there, my biological parents gave birth to me while they were both married to other people. So that was already a lot of stress in itself. And then when my stepfather realized that I wasn't his child, my stepfather and my mother had issues. They got divorced. They were arguing and had a lot of fights in the house, and he had a lot of substance abuse issues. And next thing I knew, he leaves the house, and a few weeks later, he committed suicide. And I was 5 years old when that happened. And from there, my mom went down a spiral. My entire family did. Everyone mourned, and I remembered all of my siblings were mourning, and we were as well. But more than anything, my older siblings, they were very angry with me, as if it was my fault that he took his life. And my mom also made it seem as though it was my presence and me being alive was essentially the reason for all of what they were going through with the mourning. And that led to not only emotional and verbal abuse, but that led to physical abuse. I was also sexually abused in my own house, and multiple years went by, and it got to the point where I felt like I had my back against the wall. My mom went into drugs. My sisters and my brothers just did their own thing. Everybody was very unstable, and it was to a point where I was like, okay, I'm old enough to now understand the drugs that are being brought into the house, the drugs that I'm finding, and the things that are happening. And I was fighting with my parents so much, my mom so much. And one day she went out and she was very high. And I remembered I was waiting for her to come home because she wanted to like see one of my papers or something like that, like to review it. And I remembered me and a sibling going out to go get my mom out in the streets. And we went to go get her. And when she came, she actually came back around like the other way. So we followed her back home. And I remembered her getting out of the car, and I legit like ripped her out of the car, and I was so upset. I just felt like my whole back was against the wall. I felt like my life was being ruined, and I felt as though I wasn't able to have the chance to actually be not only a kid, but actually get to a point where maybe I want to make it to 18. Maybe I want to be alive. Maybe I don't want to go into drugs or alcohol, or I don't want to use the word prostitution, but something to that nature. I don't want to go down that. I don't want to be a statistic. And I ripped her out of the car, and I remembered like yelling at the top of my lungs. I'm like, you literally are ruining my life. Like, I can't do this anymore. And next thing I knew, Child Protective Services in Jersey, it's called DIFUS or DCF right now. They change the name every few years, but DCF came and got me. And this was like their fifth time visiting the house, by the way. Like, there was a time where they came because I haven't eaten in 3 days because my mom was in rehab. Another day where I was sexually abused by my older brother. And then they did nothing about it, and my mom was like trying to cover it up and being like, oh, this is a one-off thing, it never happened before, but it was happening for years, right? And when I went into the foster care system, I remembered being scared, but I was also kind of relieved. I was like, I don't know what's going to happen, but all I know is I'm not here, right? So that was I was 15.
Oh, wow.
And it made it tough because I was not only, we all know teenagers, right? Teenagers are hormones, puberty,
Girl, I have a
changing, and
15-year-old
all.
right now. I'm going
There
through
you
it.
go.
I'm going
So
through it.
yeah, so imagine it being like the parent is the problem and you're 15. That is, right? You know what I mean? Like, you're at that point where you're like almost adulthood, and you're like, I'm not young. I know enough. And I was like at my wit's end with her. And, even to this day, I love her. I love my mom, but I was just like, you have taken a different path, and you mourned and grieved in the opposite direction you should have. And I don't judge for that because I don't know what it was like to be in your shoes. But what I know is I need to do for me. I need to do for my life because my life is today and now. So after that, I went to foster care. I moved around a bit. I went to a family member's house. They were in like a bad area, and I didn't want to be there, but it was by like Newark. I didn't want to be there. And then I went to live with a teacher, and then the teacher was getting a little weird with me, a little like towards that sexual abuse space. And I was like, I got to do something for me. Like, I need to get out. And when I say get out, I mean like take my life back and like actually become the Mary I wanted to be. And I ended up going into a shelter when I was 16 and a half. And with all of these movements, I actually got left back twice. So getting left back twice and going to the system, I was like super frustrated. I even told my DIFUS worker, I said, please leave me here. Leave me in this place. I know I'm in a shelter, but leave me here. Leave me in the same town. Let me go and finish school. And what ended up happening was I went to Bridgewater, my quote unquote senior year. And I remembered chit chatting with the kids that were in the school, and because I'm very outgoing and I'm trying to figure out what's going on, trying to figure out if I can graduate in time, see what my options are. And I found out that there were kids going to a different school every day. They were actually arriving to Bridgewater Raritan, then they were getting on a different bus and going to a different school. And I was like, what are these kids going to that school for? And they're like, oh, well, these kids, as if they have like behavior issues or like special situations, not special ed, but special like behavioral, or they have a case where like they need to do work in the corner or something like that. And I was like, well, I have a special case. I got left back twice, out of my control. I don't have behavior issues. And I was like, let me see if I can go there. And I ended up writing like night after night. I wrote up a list of what I can study, where I can study, what I need to do to graduate. And it took me days, but I stayed up and I put everything together as best as I can with the resources I can. And I went to the judge. I asked my worker if I can go to the judge and talk to him. And he was like, look, I don't know what the school's about. I've never heard of the school, but go see if they'll let you finish and catch up with your schoolwork. And with that list, I went to that school. And when I got there, they were ecstatic. They were like, oh, you don't have any behavior issues? Yeah, you could come sit in the corner and get your work done. And I did 3 years worth of school at Somerset County Academy High School. I think that was the name of it. And I did all that work in that school year. I finished, I graduated on time, and I applied to multiple schools. I got into Montclair State University and I went to the EOF program. So they let us go in around like the end of June. I went right in and I never turned back from there.
Wow. Oh my God. Y'all can't see when she's talking, but I'm here like nodding and like I'm picturing everything. And I think it's just so commendable to see that despite your circumstances that you were brought up in that were out of your control, you were able to make the decision to be like, fuck that. I want better for myself. I'm not going to be a statistic. I'm going to make the choice within myself to change my life. And I think that is such a powerful reminder for anyone who's listening or watching that you do not need to be a victim of your circumstance no matter what your situation looks like. You know, I've never known someone who has dealt with the foster care system. You know, our upbringings are completely different, but regardless of what we've gone through, the trauma that we experience, we were able to make it out, and we're here now sitting down having this conversation to let y'all know that you can do the same. Like, you don't have to succumb to the shit that you've gone through. And Mary right here is a living testament to that. So, girl, I just want to give you your flowers. I know there's so much more to you and your story. Y'all got to get her book to read and learn about all of that. Okay. Shameless plug. We're going to plug that in at the end of the conversation. But you know, girl, it's just like, wow, despite the shit that you've gone through, look at who you are now. And I know you're a business owner. Her business is called Spiritual Atlas. So I would love for you to talk about that journey and what really got you started in doing this really healing type of work to help others with your story and what you've gone through.
Yes, of course. I got myself into yoga actually in that shelter that I lived in, and it's called Vision and Pathways in Bridgewater. I do so much work with them today. I actually teach yoga to the kids there
Oh,
whenever
I
they
love
want to,
that.
because sometimes they don't want
Yeah,
to.
yeah. That's beautiful. That's like a full circle moment for you.
Yeah, yeah. And it's great. And I discovered yoga there. So a girl came on a random Saturday and only a few of us wanted to participate. And I was so intrigued and I've never seen yoga before. And I was like, this is actually pretty awesome. And I ended up chit chatting with that girl. I don't know her name. I just remember she was a cute little Caucasian girl, the sweetest thing. And she actually gave me her a yoga mat and she gave me her yoga deck. And that yoga deck has different positions, mantras, benefits on each card. And I started waking up every morning before my alarm clock went off and I started doing yoga. I started getting the girls in there because it was like 8 girls in a room. I would just tap on the bunk beds. I'm like, come on, get up, let's go, let's do it. And that transformed my mindset completely. And that I believe is what brought me to that decision making and compartmentalizing everything. And from there and into now. And that's why I decided I have to pay it forward and I have to teach people yoga, even people that don't want to do yoga and they think like, oh, you got to be flexible, you got to be this. No, you don't. You don't. And it is transformational. It is absolutely the best thing that has ever happened to me.
Yes, absolutely. I've never really been into yoga, but I know that it's something that a lot of people find so healing for themselves, especially if they've gone through trauma, gone through abuse. I know that moving your body, I've realized that now that I've been working out, going to the gym, like my form of therapy is picking up heavy things and putting them down. Like that's what I like to do, but I didn't realize how powerful movement can be to help you heal from the things that you've gone through. And it's so much more than just being in tune with your body. It does something to the mind. Like it quiets the noise for me when I feel like there's so many things going on and I just want to silence everything. Going to the gym for an hour, 2 hours, like that is my peace. And I really want people to know that there's so many different modalities that you can use when it comes to healing from whatever it is that you've gone through, whether it's meditation, journaling is huge. I just had a guest on the show talking about guided journaling and how that completely transformed her life. There's so many different modalities and resources and tools out there, and it's up to you to find the one that works best for you. So, how has that really changed your life? I know that you also do meditation and you practice mediumship. So, talk a little bit more about the spiritual woo woo side of healing and how that's been beneficial for your own personal healing.
Yes, yes. Firstly, I just want to say I love everything that you said because, girl, outlets are so important. Being able to channel the energy, the anger, the hurt, the overjoyous, right? Overstimulation. You
Yes.
got to work through that. I love that. For me, meditation, mediumship, readings in general, I found that I have always been very spiritual and always been a medium, and I never knew what a medium actually meant until I was in my early
Can
20s.
you explain what that is for someone who doesn't know it, who's hearing that for the first time?
Essentially, what it is, a medium is somebody that acts as the conduit in between the outside world, meaning metaphysical, meaning people that have passed or people that are in a coma or any sort of distant, not physically here, a distant connection to entity or a mind or scene or a situation. So mediums read people to serve as that person that connects to the dead or connects to somebody that is in that trance space, like I mentioned, somebody in a coma as well. So that person will receive messages, deliver them, and it'll come through clairvoyance, which is like seeing through the eye, clairaudience through the ear, claircognizance, just knowing, or other sense like the nose, taste, and feeling too.
And how did you get into that?
I first did not know, and I have always been. And the first time I realized that I was able to not only connect but see is when my stepfather passed, and I saw him after he passed. And that first time I saw him, I was like, I thought it was pretty normal. And as I got a little bit older, like 8, 9, 10, unfortunately, somebody else close to me passed when I was 9. Somebody, if you'll read my memoir, someone that was like an aunt to me. She was living in the house with us when my stepfather passed. So when she passed, my connection to her was for years and years on end. And of course, I still have connection to her, to my stepfather, to other people that I know that have passed. And I realized that my friends that I grew up with were okay with it, but I didn't know that like it wasn't like a normal
Right. Not
connection to
everyone
have.
can just read people. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, "Oh." So I just, I had to, like, keep it down for a little bit, and I talk about it in the book that's coming out. It's August now, in September, and my book, Torchbearer Chronicles, I talk about that story about how I figured it out and then how I more so accepted it as an adult, and I reintroduced it in tandem with the yoga and meditation, just say, "You know what? This is who I am. Let me put it all together and be who I am."
Wow, I love that. So, if you're walking down the street or you're like running errands, can you just randomly like read anyone who comes into contact with you? Like, how does that work? I'm so curious. I'm so
That is
curious.
a good question.
Yes.
No, it's amazing because a lot of people, and firstly, I do love Long Island Medium, so I'm not bashing her, but those shows portray that sort of behavior of mediums.
That's what I'm picturing. I'm like, is she reading me right now?
Yeah, you're just like walking around, you're like, I'm ready.
Right.
No, and like, firstly, I would go crazy, right? Like, you would just go out of, like, you just wouldn't be able to control it. But that's why I meditate. And the meditation is what protects me from being essentially, it's like me turning the on and off switch on. So I am able to navigate my daily day and have no interaction, no interference. But when I meditate and I put myself in that trance, I'm able to then go ahead and read.
Hmm. Wow. So, so interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Can people work with you to get their own reading?
Yeah, I do readings. I actually did one like a week or two ago. I still do clairvoyant readings, which is not mediumship, but more so I use my spirit guide. But I do both mediumship, purpose readings, and the meditations I teach also protect not just for yourself and your own peace, but to protect from the energies that, everyone coexists with every
Yeah,
day.
yeah. I love that. Definitely will leave her info in the show notes if you guys want to work with her, get your own reading, do your own meditations. But I have a few more questions before we get to that point. So, like I said before, you've gone through some shit. You've experienced a lot, and I would love to get some advice from you being on the other side of the pain and the hurt now. What has been most helpful for you in building your resilience through these experiences that you've gone through? And what would be a piece of advice that you would share with someone who's in the very beginning stages of their own healing from whatever it is that they've gone through, and they are feeling like, where the fuck do I begin? How do I start this process?
Oh, I love this question because I always have advice, but I'm never not the only source in which someone should use, right? So with that in mind, do your research and really looking into reading those self-help books, reading a few at least, reading things, researching things to help heal, experiment with meditation, do experiment, maybe try a church. If you're Catholic, maybe try a church. If you don't like that church, go to a different one. Network with people and be open-minded and not judgmental, because you'll find that so many people around you resonate. And that's not to go have a pity party, but it's to find that there is so much power in the adversity in which people go through. Many believe that it's something that holds them back or causes them not to either perform a job well or have a relationship again, right? And it's actually the opposite. You actually have an experience, you have something in your arsenal that you can carry with you. And I always encourage people to read a bit about healing, to read a bit about psychology, actually, right? You want to understand why you're processing things a certain way, but you also want to understand, is it normal that I'm thinking this negative about myself? Is it normal to not be depressed, but to actually feel depressed? What does all that mean? And to feel what you feel, be okay with feeling what you feel. They're like, oh, I'm having a bad day. I'm just going to go drink it off. And I'm like, you're actually going the opposite way, but go feel it. Go in the bed, go cry for 5 hours, take a nice bath, or go sit in the sauna, or go work out, or go walk in a park, but let the body do it. You have to reflect. You have to go in to understand how to give yourself the life you deserve outside.
Yes, yes, she's preaching, y'all. I say this all the time on my platform when I just think about my own healing journey. If you guys are hearing me for the first time, you're coming from Mary's audience. I'm a domestic violence survivor, and I was in an abusive relationship that almost killed me during the pandemic. And that was really the catalyst of my own healing journey, of me doing the work that we're talking about. But what really changed my life was no longer running away from the pain. That is something that I was used to doing. I was used to smoking it away, drinking it away, partying it away, fucking it away, like just not dealing with the pain and trying to numb it out. But when you really make the conscious decision to sit in the pain, feel the pain as uncomfortable, oh God, it fucking sucks, right? And I know you can attest to that, Mary, right? Like when you sit in your pain, in your trauma, in your hurt, and you let those feelings out, that's when you can really start the healing process. And it is not an overnight thing. I know, especially with social media nowadays, it's rainbows and butterflies and, oh, I'm living my best life now. No, that's not the reality. Dealing with your shit is fucking ugly. It's painful, it's dark, it's heavy, it's what we don't want to deal with. But it is in that darkness, that hurt, that you can really come out to the other side and thrive despite where you've gone through. I mean, y'all, look at Mary, look at where she came from. She was born into this, right? But she made the decision to sit in her shit, to feel the feelings, and now look at her. And I really want that to be the reminder for everyone who's listening or watching. Like, it's okay. Accept your situation for what it is, but know that you can absolutely change it.
Yes, girl, you preaching.
Yes, we are both preaching because we're on the other side, but we understand the hurt. We've been in that position, but we're able to come out and let people know that you don't have to stay there. You can be there for a little bit, but don't move in and unpack your baggage there because it can get real dark. It can get real heavy. Okay, so tell me if you've had a significant mentor or an influence during your own healing journey, someone that you want to shout out or give their flowers that really impacted you despite the things that you've gone through.
So for adulthood, I want to give all of my friends credit. A lot of my friends, the ones that I don't have anymore, the ones that I do have still, and my significant other, I want to give all of them credit. And I also want to give credit to the professor that I did my undergraduate research with. It was so ironic because he's the opposite of me. He's very stern, very serious, typical mad scientist. But by the end of my undergraduate years, he was so nice, so open, so conversational. And I realized that I think I influenced him too, but he changed me so much. He made me more so the scientist that I became. But my friends, I had a lot of older friends, and I worked in retail during college. And my boss was my best friend at the time. And other people that were older were like the managers or like leads, and people that was in school with, they were getting their masters, I was getting my bachelor's. All of those people, my husband's friends, all of them, they're all older. I felt as though none of them had to like tell me or correct me and say like, hey, you're not doing the right thing. None of them did that. But all of them were like reminding me like, hey, look at you. Look at you going. Like, keep going. Look where you've been, where you are. That's okay. You're processing. That is all right, girl. You are in your 20s. Let it be your 20s. Let yourself process. Like you mentioned, let the dirt churn it a bit and let it happen, and let yourself marinate for a minute and then get back to the business, because they reminded me that not only did I make it through the hardest part of my life, I truly believe it was, and I'm very blessed. I'm very grateful for today. I have gone through things in adulthood, but I feel so prepared. And it's like that constant reminder of like, girl, where you been at, where you are now, keep going. So I have to thank them for that.
I love that. I think it's so important to have those kind of people in your circle because, I mean, I'm not going to speak for everyone, but like for myself, I can be my biggest critic. I can be my biggest hater. I cannot celebrate myself. And it's when you have those people in your life, like, bitch, look at where you've been at and look at who you are today. Like, give yourself your flowers, right? Shout out to those people. And, if you don't have those people in your life, find the communities of people who you not necessarily want to emulate, but you want to be around that kind of energy. You want to be around that uplifting, I'm working on myself, people who are cheering you on. Because I used to have really toxic people around my life, which in turn made me very toxic. And I think when it comes to this whole healing journey, sometimes you do need to cut off those relationships with people that are bringing you down. And sometimes that is family. Sometimes that is the bestie that's been in your life for 20 something years, but all she does is boy crazy and gossiping about the next one. Like sometimes you have to really end those relationships in order for you to allow new ones in who are going to heal you, who are going to help you become the best version of yourself. So I want to ask you because you are writing a memoir. It's coming out hopefully by the end of this year.
Yes, it definitely will. It's all written. I'm just at the cleanup
Okay,
pieces.
I love that. So talk a little bit about what the writing process has been for you and what made you want to write out your life story for the world, for strangers to know about. What was that like for you?
The writing process has been interesting. I started my first draft in foster care. And I remembered thinking to myself, this is crazy. I gotta write this shit down. That was like the first thing I was
Yep.
like, I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but I gotta write this shit down. This is wild, wild boy shit. And there's like I laughed because I remembered like being in bed and I was like looking at the ceiling and I'm like, wow. So all of that forward and backward, I started that first draft. A few years later, I lost the draft, of course, moving around. The USBs were trash
Yeah.
back in the late 2000s. Do you remember when they first came out? So that was a mess. And I lost a few rounds of it. And I ended up starting like my first official draft again back in 2014. That was when I started again. And I've been on and off with it for some time. Obviously, COVID gave us a lot of time. And I pretty much finished my first draft of the first book in 2021. I did like publish it shortly and then I took it off because I was like, I got to clean it up a bit and make it, the grade in which I should be writing. I have a master's degree, right? I have to act like as I do have one. So right? Because like sometimes you get excited and you're like, oh, the work's done. Writing a book is not writing a blog or writing a post. And I write blogs now and it's nothing compared to a book. It's crazy, but beautiful, but painful. Lots of thinking, lots of making sure you're, like you mentioned, don't be your inner critic, but be the inner critic. There's that balance. Get help, but don't get help, but do get help because you're reading your own book over and over again. You need second, third, fourth. You need 10, 20 pairs of eyes. You need lots of help. So that made me realize how much of the village it takes to write a book. And I'm now I have three in the works right now. And I have one that is done and is going to be published in a month. So that book will come out before my memoir, which is that Torchbearer Chronicles I mentioned.
Yes, yes. I love that. And this episode is going to come out in September. So we'll definitely link the book that comes out then, and then we'll update it when your memoir comes out. What do you want people to gain by reading your story of the memoir? What's the biggest takeaway that you want people to have by learning about you and what you've been through to who you are today?
The book is called Barred Wings, and the subtitle is A Memoir of Building Resilience. So that is my goal. My goal is for readers to read the book to see the story, but understand that there is resignation, not resignation, but resignation in which we all have to each other's stories. And maybe there's multitudes and degrees about how much that person that's reading my book has gone through versus me, but maybe they need to read the book to understand, as you mentioned, I can get to the other side. It's not for me, it's for everyone to know that resilience can be built and can continually be built at any age, any time, any situation. It's possible.
Hmm. I love that. I love that so much. I just think there's such a healing power that happens when we do share our truths with the world. I mean, that's why I started this podcast. It started off with me telling my own story of what I went through in that relationship. And it's just grown into this beautiful community where I'm now able to feature so many different trauma survivors who've been able to turn their pain into their power and who are out here thriving. Okay, Mary, I'm so glad that me and you connected. Again, shout out to Amber for bringing us together. My last question to you, since you're on the Watch Us Thrive podcast, tell me, what does thriving mean to you?
Thriving means it doesn't just mean growing and blossoming, but it's the continual spread of energy. And of course, we'd like to say good energy, positive, thriving energy, almost like that show. I forgot the name of that show. It ends with us, or that end of the world show with the fungus thing going on. I want when people say thrive needs to be contagious and it just needs to be everywhere. So thriving, as I said, not just in that flower, not just the flower starting from a seed and going into a little plant blossoming, but continuing to spread, pollinate, go into every single piece and crevice and piece that you can make yourself into.
Yes.
That's thriving to me.
Absolutely. I mean, that's just like the healing journey, right? I will never say that I'm ever healed. I'm always healing because this is a lifelong journey that I'm going to be on. And I'm just so grateful to have you come on the show. I know people are going to want to know more about you. They're going to buy that book. They're going to work with you. So plug in how we can follow you, any offerings that you have, and anything else that you want to leave the people with.
Yes. Spiritual Atlas. On my Instagram, it's spiritual_atlas11. On Twitter, it's the same. On Facebook, it's just Spiritual Atlas. But if you Google it, it comes right up. So Mary Love Spiritual Atlas comes right up. I do have a referral program that I just started. So if you refer a friend, you'll get a certain percent off. It's 4%. And then the person you referred should be getting 8% off. And I will have my signed copies on soon. As soon as they come out, I do have pre-order already up for the Torchbearer Chronicles, so you could do your pre-order signed copy now.
Yes, yes. I love that. She is a published author, y'all. She is a multifaceted dad bitch. That's what I like to call it.
Yes.
Mary, thank you so much for being here. I'm so honored to have connected with you. I'm so excited to continue watching you grow and thrive and pollinate all that good energy out into the world. Thank you so much for being here, and I'm so honored.
Thank you. I'm so thankful. I'm very grateful that you were able to bring me on and us further connect after being with Amber. Thank you, my love.
Yes, thank you.